You probably think I'm a monster. Standing in that hospital room 7 years ago, my wife in the recovery room next door, our newborn daughter crying in the bassinet beside me, and I'm refusing to sign the birth certificate. The nurse looked at me like I'd just kicked a puppy. "Just need Dad's signature here, Mr. Harper." I stared at that line. Black ink, official seal. The word father printed in Times New Roman. My hand was shaking. The pen felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. "I need a paternity test first." The silence that followed was deafening. The nurse's smile froze on her face. In the next room, I could hear Sarah talking to her mother on the phone, her voice bright with new mother exhaustion and joy. She had no idea what I was about to do. "Sir," the nurse said carefully, "your wife just gave birth. This is highly unusual. I know what I said. If you've ever been in my shoes, you might understand why I did what I did. Or maybe you'll judge me anyway. That's fine. I judged myself for years. Just hear me out." Because that moment in the hospital, that wasn't the beginning of my story, and it sure as hell wasn't the end. Let me back up. 3 days ago, I stood in a cemetery in the rain and buried my father. Richard Harper, 74 years old, retired circuit court judge, the most principled man I ever knew. The service was small. Dad didn't want a fuss, just family and a few close friends. My wife Sarah stood beside me under the black umbrella, her hand cold in mine. Our daughter Emma, 7 years old now, clutched my other hand and asked in a small voice why Grandpa had to go away. "He's not gone, sweetheart," I told her. "He's just somewhere else now. Somewhere else." God, what a lie. Dad was gone, and with him went the last person in my family I could trust. My brother Robert stood 15 feet away, separate from us, his hands jammed in his pockets. He wouldn't look at me, couldn't, probably. We hadn't spoken in 3 months, not since I'd confronted him about the texts I'd found on Sarah's phone. He'd laughed it off, called me paranoid. Sarah had cried and said I was imagining things. But I wasn't. I'd known for years. I just hadn't had proof. Until Dad's detective found it for me. But I'm getting ahead of myself again. The funeral ended. People came back to Dad's house, my house now, though I didn't know it yet, for coffee and those terrible grocery store sandwich trays nobody actually eats. Sarah played the grieving daughter-in-law perfectly. She'd always been good at performances. Robert stayed for 10 minutes, then left without saying goodbye. By that evening, Sarah was packing. "I need some space," she said, folding clothes into a suitcase with mechanical precision. "To process everything, your father's death, our marriage, all of it." "Where are you going?" She didn't answer right away, just kept folding. When she finally looked at me, I saw something in her eyes I'd never seen before. Relief. "Robert has a spare room." I laughed, not because it was funny, because it was so perfectly, grotesquely inevitable. "Of course he does." "David, don't make this harder than it has to be." "Harder than it has to be?" "Sarah, my father died 3 days ago." "I know, and I'm sorry, but we've been over for a long time. You know that." Emma appeared in the doorway, her little face confused. "Mommy, where are you going?" Sarah's mask slipped for just a second. Then she knelt down, forced a smile. "Mommy's going to stay with Uncle Robert for a little while, baby. But I'll see you soon, okay?" "Why can't you stay here?" "Because," Sarah glanced at me, "because sometimes grown-ups need time apart." Emma looked at me, her eyes welling up. "Daddy?" I pulled her close. "It's okay, sweetheart. We're going to be okay." Sarah finished packing. She kissed Emma on the head, didn't look at me, and walked out. I heard her car start, heard it pull away, and then it was just me and Emma in that big quiet house, standing in a room that smelled like Dad's cologne and old leather. Emma tugged on my sleeve. "Daddy, did Mommy leave because of me?" "No, baby, never because of you." I picked her up, even though she was getting too big for it. She wrapped her arms around my neck and buried her face in my shoulder. "This is between Mommy and me. You didn't do anything wrong." But I knew the truth. Emma wasn't the reason Sarah left. Emma was the reason she'd stayed as long as she had, and not because she loved her, because of what she thought Emma would be worth. The next morning, I found the envelope in Dad's study. It was sitting on his desk, right on top of his old leather blotter, like he'd left it there for me to find. Heavy cream-colored paper, my name written in his careful handwriting. For David, open after will reading. My fingers traced the letters. Dad had known he was dying. Heart disease, the doctors said. He'd had months to prepare, months to arrange things. And, knowing Dad, he'd arranged everything perfectly. I almost opened it. God, I wanted to. But I could hear his voice in my head. Patient son, everything in its proper order. So, I set it aside and waited. The call came that afternoon. Margaret Sullivan, Dad's attorney, formal, professional. Mr. Harper, the reading of your father's will is scheduled for tomorrow at 2 p.m. Your presence is required. Please bring photo ID. Will Sarah and Robert be there? A pause. All interested parties have been notified. Interested parties. I wondered if Margaret knew. If Dad had told her what was coming. Something in her tone suggested she did. That night, Sarah called. We need to talk about the house and Emma's future. Robert and I think... Robert and you. What, Sarah? We're together now. We're not hiding anymore. My grip tightened on the phone. 3 days, Sarah. Dad's been dead 3 days. We waited long enough, David. We've been miserable for years. You know that. Right, miserable. Is that what you were when you were fucking him in our bed while I was on business trips? Silence. Yeah, I said. I know. I've known for a while now. And you know what the funny thing is? So did Dad. What are you talking about? Tomorrow, 2 p.m., Dad's attorney's office. Be there. I hung up. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about that moment in the hospital 7 years ago. The paternity test I'd demanded, Sarah's tears, her accusations, her threats of divorce. In the end, I'd backed down, signed the certificate, told myself it didn't matter, that I loved Emma anyway, that biology wasn't everything, but it did matter. Every time I looked at Emma and saw Robert's eyes staring back at me, every time she smiled and I saw his smile, every time I wondered if the child I was raising, the daughter I loved more than my own life, was actually my brother's. The truth is, I'd been a coward. I'd chosen ignorance over certainty because certainty was too terrifying. What if Emma wasn't mine? What if I'd been raising my brother's child for 7 years? What if my entire life was built on a lie? Well, tomorrow I'd find out. Because if there's one thing I knew about my father, it was this. He didn't tolerate lies. And he sure as hell didn't let betrayal go unpunished. If you've ever sat waiting for the other shoe to drop, you know that feeling. That moment right before everything changes. That's where I was when I finally fell asleep that night. Emma curled up beside me in my bed because she was afraid to be alone. Tomorrow, I'd find out what Dad really thought of all of us. Tomorrow, Sarah and Robert would find out too. The attorney's office was exactly what you'd expect. Dark wood paneling, leather chairs that creaked when you sat down, bookshelves full of law volumes nobody ever read. Margaret Sullivan sat behind a massive desk, reading glasses perched on her nose. Dad's will spread out in front of her. I arrived first. She greeted me with a warm handshake and eyes that held something that looked like sympathy. Or maybe pity. Hard to tell. Your father spoke highly of you, David. I hope I deserved it. I think you'll find he believed you did. Sarah and Robert arrived 15 minutes late. Together, of course. Robert's hand was on the small of Sarah's back, possessive, proprietary. She looked expensive. New clothes, new haircut, professional makeup, like she was going to a job interview instead of a will reading. They sat together on the opposite side of the office. Robert didn't look at me. Sarah checked her phone. Margaret cleared her throat. Shall we begin? Nobody objected. This is the last will and testament of Richard Allen Harper, dated 6 months before his passing. He was very specific about how this should be conducted. First, I'll read through the standard bequests, then we'll address the estate distribution. She went through the preliminaries, $5,000 to the Veterans Charity, $10,000 to the local library, his golf clubs to his friend William, his law books to the courthouse, small personal things. Sarah was barely paying attention. Robert kept glancing at his watch. They thought they knew how this would go. Equal split between the brothers, maybe some money for Emma. Standard stuff. They had no idea. Now, Margaret said, adjusting her glasses, we come to the primary estate distribution. Sarah sat up straighter. Robert leaned forward. Margaret read slowly, clearly. To my son David Harper, I leave the entirety of my estate, including, but not limited to, the family home located at 847 Riverside Drive, valued at approximately $800,000, my investment portfolio currently valued at $1.2 million, my shares in Harper Consulting valued at $500,000, all personal effects, vehicles, and remaining assets. The silence was absolute. Robert's face went from confused to pale to red in the space of 5 seconds. "Wait," Sarah said. "What about Robert?" "I'm getting to that," Margaret said calmly. Robert stood up. "This is bullshit. Dad wouldn't—" "Sit down, Mr. Harper, or I'll have you removed from this office." Something in her voice made him sit. Margaret continued. "For my granddaughter Emma Harper, age 7, I establish a trust fund in the amount of $500,000 for education and general welfare." Sarah exhaled. "See?" He thought about Emma. "The trust shall be managed solely by David Harper," Margaret cut her off, "contingent on him maintaining legal custody and guardianship of Emma. Should custody pass to any other party, including but not limited to Sarah Harper or Robert Harper, the trust shall immediately dissolve and all funds shall revert to the Children's Hospital charity." "That's not legal," Sarah said, her voice rising. "It absolutely is, Ms. Harper. Your next words should be chosen carefully." Sarah's mouth closed with a click. Margaret picked up a smaller envelope. "To my son, Robert Harper." She paused, looked at Robert with something that might have been disappointment. "I leave the sum of $1 and this letter." She slid the envelope across the desk. Robert stared at it like it was a snake. Then he grabbed it, ripped it open, and read. I watched his face as he processed the words, watched the color drain away, watched his hands start to shake. He crumpled the letter and threw it on the floor. "Fuck this! Fuck him! Fuck all of you!" He stormed out. The door slammed behind him. Sarah sat frozen, her carefully constructed composure cracking. "Margaret, there has to be some mistake. Richard loved both his sons." "There's no mistake, Ms. Harper. And as you're no longer legally family, you're not entitled to contest the will or question its contents. You're only here as a courtesy because of Emma." "But," Margaret held up a hand. "However, before you leave, there's one more thing." She pulled out a thick manila envelope and handed it to me. "David, your father left this for you. He asked that you open it in private, but given the circumstances, I think you should look at it now." My hands were shaking as I broke the seal. Inside was a letter, 10 pages, handwritten in Dad's careful script. And beneath it, another sealed envelope labeled Evidence. I started reading, out loud because I needed to hear it, needed Sarah to hear it. "Son, if you're reading this, I'm gone. And you've just learned what I've known for 2 years. Your wife and brother betrayed you." My voice caught. I forced myself to continue. "I know about Emma. I know everything. The private investigator's report is in the second envelope. You're wondering why I didn't tell you, why I let you suffer. Because, David, you needed to make your own choice. Would you stay because of fear, or leave when you found the strength? I couldn't make that choice for you." Sarah was crying now, quiet, horrified tears. "But I could make one choice. I could ensure that loyalty is rewarded and betrayal has consequences. Robert always thought being my son entitled him to my legacy. He was wrong. Legacy is earned. You earned it every day, by working hard, by loving your daughter even when you doubted, by staying when others would have run." I looked up at Sarah. Her face was ashen. "The pocket watch is yours now," I continued reading. "Read the engraving. It was my father's lesson to me, and now it's mine to you. Blood doesn't lie, but loyalty defines family. Emma is not biologically yours. The DNA test is in this package. But biology isn't family, son. Family is who stays, who loves when it's hard, who protects the innocent." My voice broke. I took a breath, steadied myself. "You get to choose. Is Emma your daughter? Not because of chromosomes, but because you choose her. I believe you'll choose right. You always have. Build the family you deserve, David, and know that I am proud of the man you became. Love, Dad." Silence filled the office like water filling a drowning man's lungs. I opened the second envelope. Inside was a file 2 inches thick. Private investigator's report. Photos of Sarah and Robert at motels, receipts. Timeline, 3 years of affair. Text messages, subpoenaed somehow, probably through Dad's connections. financial records showing Robert's $50,000 in credit card debt, and at the bottom, a DNA test from a lab I didn't recognize. Sample A, Emma Harper. Sample B, Robert Harper. Probability of paternity, 99.9%. There's also video, Margaret said quietly. Your father had security cameras installed in your garage 2 years ago. The footage is on this drive. She held up a USB stick. 43 occasions when Robert's vehicle was at your home while you were traveling for work. Sarah made a sound like a wounded animal. I looked at her, really looked at her. How long were you planning to wait? Until Dad died, then divorce me, take half the marital assets, and run off with Robert? Split the inheritance? She didn't answer. Didn't need to. I'd read their text messages. Can't wait until the old man dies so we can stop hiding. David will probably give you half in the divorce. Then we split Richard's inheritance. We'll be set. Emma's going to be pissed, but she'll get over it. He knew, I said. Dad knew everything. And he made sure you got exactly what you deserved. Nothing. I stood up, tucked the envelope under my arm. Margaret, thank you. I'll be in touch about the estate details. Of course. And David? She smiled, and for the first time I saw something fierce and satisfied in her expression. Your father was a brilliant man. This will is airtight. They can contest all they want. They'll lose. I walked out. Sarah followed me into the parking lot. David, wait. We can work this out. I turned. Work what out, Sarah? You fucked my brother for 3 years. Emma isn't mine. And you were literally waiting for my father to die so you could cash in. What exactly are we working out here? It's not like that. It's exactly like that. I have the text, Sarah. I have the video. I have the DNA test. I have everything. David, please, I love Emma. You can't keep her from me. Love her? You called her a pissed-off obstacle in your texts. You saw her as a paycheck. The trust fund Dad left? You were already planning how to spend it. Robert appeared from behind his car. You self-righteous prick. Dad always loved you more. No, Robert. I was surprised by how calm my voice was, how cold. He loved us equally, but he respected me. There's a difference. Respect is earned, and you earned nothing. You're a 45-year-old failure with 50 grand in credit card debt who slept with his brother's wife because you were too weak to build your own life. I'll contest the will. With what money? You're broke, and even if you weren't, you'd lose. Dad was a judge for 30 years. You think he didn't know how to write an airtight will? Robert lunged at me. I didn't move. Security from the building intercepted him, held him back. Go ahead, I said. Assault me in front of witnesses. Give me another reason to keep you away from Emma forever. Sarah put a hand on Robert's arm. Robert, stop. Let's just go. They got in Robert's car, the same car that had been in my driveway 43 times while I was gone, and drove away. I sat in my own car for a long time, the envelope on the passenger seat. Then I opened the glove compartment and pulled out the item Margaret had given me at the end of the meeting after Sarah and Robert had left, Dad's pocket watch, silver, tarnished with age, belonging to his father before him. I opened it. Inside the cover was an engraving I'd never noticed before. Blood doesn't lie, but loyalty defines family. R.H. Sr. I sat there in that parking lot and cried. Not because I'd lost Sarah. I'd lost her years ago. I'd just been too afraid to admit it. Not because of Robert. He had always been weak. I cried because my father had known, had watched me suffer, had gathered evidence, built his case, and waited. Not because he was cruel, but because he knew I needed to find my own strength. And now he'd given me 3 gifts. The money was the smallest one. It would provide for Emma, sure, security. The truth was the painful one, but it set me free. But the watch and the message it carried, that was the one that mattered. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Custody hearing date set. We're taking Emma. You're not her real father, and you know it. Sarah's attorney. I looked at the watch, at the evidence file, at my reflection in the rearview mirror. Then I guess we're going to court, I said to my empty car. And Sarah, you won't like how this ends. Weeks passed. Each one felt like walking through fog. I moved into Dad's house permanently, surrounded by his things, his books, his photos. Every room smelled like him. Every corner held a memory. Work was impossible. I'd sit at my desk at the engineering firm and stare at blueprints without seeing them, My colleague James tried to help. "How are you holding up, man?" "My wife is fucking my brother and I'm supposed to act normal?" He winced. "Jesus, David, I'm sorry. What are you gonna do?" "Wait for the custody hearing, then I'll figure out the rest." "You really want to keep Emma? Even though she's not, she's my daughter, James. Biology doesn't change 7 years of bedtime stories and scraped knees." But alone in that house at night, the doubts crept in. I'd find myself looking at old photos, trying to see Robert and Emma's face, trying to remember when I'd first suspected, when the doubt had first taken root. It had been 4 years ago. I'd come home early from a business trip. Robert's car was in the driveway, Sarah and Robert in the kitchen laughing too comfortably. Emma was asleep upstairs. "What's going on?" I'd asked. Sarah had jumped, then recovered too quickly. Robert stopped by to drop off Emma's birthday present. "Just being the fun uncle," Robert had added, that smirk on his face. Sarah's hair had been wet, freshly showered. Robert's shirt was wrinkled. I'd told myself I was paranoid, buried myself in work, avoided thinking about it. But late at night in the guest bedroom of our marital home, because I couldn't bring myself to sleep in our bed anymore, I'd stared at the ceiling and known. The way you know things in your bones even when you don't want to. Now I lived alone in Dad's house, in the neighborhood where I'd grown up. It should have felt like coming home. Instead, it felt like haunting a museum of my own past. Emma came for supervised visits, court-ordered, 2 hours every Sunday afternoon. We'd sit in the living room with a social worker watching from the corner, and Emma would ask questions I didn't know how to answer. "Daddy, when can I come home?" "Soon, sweetheart, soon." "Mommy says you don't want me anymore." My heart broke. "That's not true, Em. That will never be true. I'm fighting to bring you home. I promise." But promising wasn't enough. Every time she left, I'd watch her walk away and wonder if I'd see her again. Wonder if some judge would decide that blood mattered more than love, that Robert's DNA meant more than 7 years of me being her father. Sunday dinners were the worst, Dad's tradition. Every Sunday, the family would gather around his big oak table for roast dinner. Potatoes, vegetables, gravy, the works. "Harpers don't abandon family," he used to say, carving the meat. "This is what keeps us together." I made the roast that first Sunday alone, set one place at that massive table, ate in silence while Dad's empty chair watched me. The food tasted like ashes. My phone rang. "Sarah." "David, we need to talk." "No, we don't. This is about Emma's future. Robert and I think—" "You think what, Sarah? That you can take my daughter and use her trust fund to finance your new life? That's not— Don't make this uglier than it has to be." "Uglier? You fucked my brother for 3 years. You plotted to wait for my father to die so you could take his money. You had a baby with Robert and let me raise her, knowing the whole time. And you're worried about things getting ugly." Silence. Then, quietly, "We deserve to be happy. You deserve exactly what you're getting, which is nothing." I hung up. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept going back to that hospital room 7 years ago, the moment I demanded the paternity test. Sarah's tears, her accusations, paranoid, controlling, insecure, all the words she'd thrown at me like weapons. And I'd backed down, signed the certificate, told myself love was enough. "For the sake of our family," I'd said. What a joke. There had been no family, just a lie I'd chosen to believe because the truth was too terrible. But Dad hadn't let me hide from the truth. He'd forced me to see it, every detail, documented and archived. And now I had a choice to make. Keep Emma, knowing she wasn't mine biologically, or let her go. The question haunted me, but deep down, I already knew the answer. The letter came the next morning. Formal letterhead, Sarah's attorney. Custody hearing scheduled for 3 weeks from today. Ms. Harper is seeking full custody on the grounds that Mr. David Harper is not the biological father and has no legal claim to the child Emma Harper. Furthermore, Ms. Harper alleges that Mr. Harper is using his recently inherited wealth to manipulate the custody proceedings and deny Ms. Harper her rights as Emma's biological mother. I read it 3 times. Then I called Margaret Sullivan. "They're saying I'm using Dad's money to manipulate things." "Let them say what they want, David. We have documentation, we have evidence, and we have something they don't." "What's that?" "The truth, and a judge who knew your father and respects his legacy." "Will that be enough?" "David, your father was one of the most respected judges in this state. When I submit his investigation file to family court, along with his personal letters, it will be more than enough. In 3 weeks, 21 days to prepare, to gather myself, to figure out how to fight for my daughter. I spent those weeks in Dad's study, reading through the investigator's report over and over, learning the details of my wife's betrayal like studying for an exam. Every date Robert's car was at my house, every motel they'd visited, every text message planning their future, my money, my father's inheritance, my daughter's trust fund. They'd been so careful and so stupid. Careful enough to hide from me. Stupid enough to leave a trail my father's detective could follow. The pocket watch sat on the desk while I worked, its soft ticking the only sound in the silent house. I'd picked it up once, read the engraving again. Blood doesn't lie, but loyalty defines family. Dad had left me a roadmap. Now I just had to follow it. The day of the custody hearing arrived. I put on my best suit, the one I'd worn to Dad's funeral, clipped the pocket watch to my vest, picked up the evidence file. In the bathroom mirror, I looked like my father. Same jawline, same tired eyes, same expression he used to get before a difficult case. "Give him hell, Dad," I whispered. The courthouse was cold, institutional gray walls, fluorescent lights, that particular smell of floor wax and old paper. Family court, 3rd floor. I arrived early, sat on a bench outside the courtroom, and waited. Margaret found me there. "Ready?" "As I'll ever be." "David, listen to me. They're going to try to paint you as vindictive, using your wealth and connections to punish Sarah for leaving you, trying to keep Emma from her biological family out of spite. I know. Don't lose your temper in there. Don't give them ammunition, just tell the truth. Let the evidence speak." "What if it's not enough?" She put a hand on my shoulder. "Your father spent 2 years building this case. Trust him. Trust the process." Sarah and Robert arrived together. Sarah wore a conservative dress, minimal makeup, trying to look like a concerned mother instead of what she was. Robert had cleaned up, suit, fresh haircut, playing the part of the responsible uncle. They didn't look at me. We were called in. The judge was a woman in her 50s, sharp eyes, no nonsense expression. She reviewed the filings while we all sat in silence. "This is a custody hearing for Emma Harper, age 7, she began. "Ms. Sarah Harper is seeking full custody. Mr. David Harper is contesting. Let's begin with opening statements." Sarah's attorney stood. Young guy, expensive suit, the kind of lawyer you hire when you're trying to look legitimate. "Your Honor, this case is straightforward. Ms. Harper is Emma's biological mother. DNA testing has confirmed that Mr. David Harper is not Emma's biological father. Ms. Harper has been Emma's primary caregiver for her entire life. Mr. Harper is attempting to use his recently inherited wealth to manipulate these proceedings and punish Ms. Harper for ending their marriage. This is about a vindictive ex-husband, not about Emma's best interests." Margaret stood. "Your Honor, this case is about what a family truly is. Mr. Harper has been Emma's father since birth, not biologically, but in every way that matters. He's been her primary emotional support, her provider, her protector. The evidence will show that Ms. Harper's motivations for seeking custody are financial, not maternal, and that Mr. Harper's sole concern is Emma's well-being." The judge nodded. "Ms. Harper, you may present your case." Sarah took the stand. She looked small, vulnerable, every inch the wronged woman. She'd always been good at this, playing whatever role the situation required. "I love my daughter," she began, her voice trembling slightly. "Emma is my world. Yes, my marriage ended. Yes, I'm with Robert now. But that doesn't make me a bad mother. David is trying to punish me for moving on. He's using Emma as a weapon." Her attorney guided her through the questions. How devoted she was, how she'd sacrificed for Emma, how traumatized Emma had been by the separation. All lies wrapped in tears. Then Margaret stood for cross-examination. "Ms. Harper, when did your relationship with Robert Harper begin?" "After the separation." "Under oath, Ms. Harper." A pause, a flicker of fear in Sarah's eyes. "We reconnected a few months before. I have text messages dating back 3 years, subpoenaed text messages between you and Robert Harper. Would you like me to read them to the court?" "That's private." The judge leaned forward. "Ms. Harper, answer the question truthfully or I'll hold you in contempt." Sarah's carefully constructed facade cracked. Fine, 3 years. We've been together for 3 years. So you were having an affair with your husband's brother for 3 years while married to David Harper. It wasn't like that. Then what was it like? Let me read some of these messages. Margaret pulled out a printed document. November 15th, 3 years ago, from you to Robert. Can't wait until the old man dies so we can stop hiding. December 3rd, David will probably give me half in the divorce. Then we split Richard's inheritance. We'll be set. March 8th, 2 years ago. Emma's going to be pissed, but she'll get over it. The courtroom was silent. Ms. Harper, Margaret continued, were you and Robert planning to wait for Richard Harper to die so you could profit from his inheritance? No, I mean, those texts were taken out of context. What context makes "can't wait until the old man dies" acceptable? Sarah couldn't answer. Margaret submitted the entire text message log into evidence. The judge read through them, her expression growing harder with each page. Then came the photographs. Sarah and Robert at motels, dates and timestamps. Robert's car in my driveway, 43 times over 2 years, always when I was traveling. Sarah started crying. Real tears this time, not performance. Panic. Your Honor, Margaret said calmly, I'd also like to submit a comprehensive private investigation report commissioned by the late Richard Harper 2 years before his death. It documents the entire affair in detail. Financial records showing Robert Harper's significant debt, $50,000 at the time of Richard's death, establishing motive for the relationship. She handed the file to the judge. It landed on the desk with a heavy thud. And finally, Margaret said, I'd like to submit a DNA paternity test conducted by Richard Harper, confirming that Robert Harper is Emma's biological father. Mr. David Harper was unaware of this until after Richard's death. The judge looked at me. Mr. Harper, you've known for weeks that you're not Emma's biological father, yet you're fighting for custody. Why? Margaret nodded at me. I stood. Your Honor, may I speak? You may. I walked to the witness stand, was sworn in, sat down. My hands were shaking. I touched the pocket watch through my vest pocket for strength. I've been Emma's father since the moment she was born. I changed her diapers. I walked her to her first day of school. I read her bedtime stories every night for 7 years. When she had nightmares, she called for me. When she fell off her bike, I bandaged her knee. When she made me a Father's Day card, she wrote, "Best dad ever." My voice cracked. I steadied it. Yes, I demanded a paternity test when she was born, because I had doubts. But Sarah convinced me I was paranoid. She cried, she threatened divorce. She made me feel crazy for doubting her. So I signed that birth certificate. I chose to be Emma's father. Not because DNA said I had to, because I wanted to, because I loved her. And you still want custody? The judge asked. Absolutely. Robert donated DNA, Your Honor. I donated my life. There's a difference. Sarah's attorney stood. Your Honor, regardless of Mr. Harper's feelings, the biological fact remains. Sit down, the judge said coldly. I'm not finished. She looked at Sarah. Ms. Harper, these text messages show that you viewed your father-in-law's death as a financial opportunity, that you planned to profit from his inheritance, that you referred to your own daughter as an obstacle. Is that accurate? Those messages were... I was venting. I didn't mean yes or no, Ms. Harper. Yes, but... And you began a sexual relationship with your husband's brother 3 years ago while still married. Yes. And you allowed Mr. David Harper to believe he was Emma's father for 7 years, knowing Robert Harper was the biological father? Yes. The judge closed the file. I've heard enough. However, before I make my ruling, I'd like to speak with Emma privately. My heart stopped. Your Honor, Mr. Harper, I understand your concern, but Emma is 7 years old enough to express her preferences. I'll speak with her in my chambers, briefly, just to understand her perspective. They brought Emma in. She looked so small in that courtroom, clutching a stuffed rabbit I'd won for her at a fair 2 years ago. She saw me, and her face lit up. Daddy! She tried to run to me, but the bailiff gently redirected her. The judge took her hand, led her into chambers. The door closed. We waited. 10 minutes felt like 10 hours. When they came back out, Emma went straight to me. I pulled her onto my lap. She buried her face in my chest. The judge returned to her bench. I've spoken with Emma. She's a bright, articulate child. She's clear about what she wants. Sarah leaned forward, hope on her face. Emma wishes to remain in Mr. David Harper's custody. She views him as her father. She stated, and I quote, "Robert is just the man who made me. David is my dad." Sarah gasped. She doesn't understand. Ms. Harper, your daughter understands perfectly. She understands that her father is the man who raised her, who loves her, who's fighting for her, not the man who provided DNA and then ignored her for 7 years. The judge looked at both of us. I've reviewed all evidence. The court finds that David Harper has demonstrated consistent, loving care for Emma throughout her life. Ms. Sarah Harper's motivations appear partially financial, per her own documented statements. Robert Harper has shown no interest in parenting Emma and will not be considered as a custodial option. Most importantly, Emma has clearly expressed her preference to remain with David Harper. She lifted her gavel. Therefore, full legal custody is awarded to David Harper. Sarah Harper is granted supervised visitation every other weekend, contingent on completion of co-parenting classes and a psychological evaluation. This hearing is adjourned. The gavel fell. Sarah stood, her face twisted. "You can't do this. She's my daughter." "Ms. Harper, I just did. And if you continue this outburst, I'll restrict your visitation further." Security moved towards Sarah. She looked at me, at Emma, at the judge. Then she turned and ran from the courtroom. I just held Emma. She was crying, but not sad crying, relief crying. "Am I coming home, Daddy?" "Yeah, sweetheart, you're coming home." Outside the courthouse, Robert was waiting for Sarah. I watched through the window as she ran to him, sobbing. "Robert, we need to appeal. We can fight this." He took a step back. "We, Sarah, there is no we." "What are you talking about?" "You lost. No custody means no trust fund. No trust fund means no money. I'm done." "But you said you love me?" "I love the idea of winning, of beating David, of getting Dad's money. But he won. He always fucking wins. And I'm not sticking around for the fallout." He walked away. Just left her there on the courthouse steps, alone and broken. Emma tugged on my sleeve. "Daddy, can we go home now?" "Yeah, baby, let's go home." We stopped for ice cream on the way. Emma got chocolate. I got nothing. Just watched her smile, watched her be a kid again, watched the tension drain from her little shoulders. Margaret joined us. "You did well in there, David." "We did well. I couldn't have done it without Dad's investigation. Your father was a remarkable man. He knew exactly how this would play out. He always did." Emma finished her ice cream and leaned against me, sleepy. "Daddy, I love you." "I love you too, kiddo." Margaret smiled. "You know, Richard told me something once, about 6 months before he died. He said, 'Margaret, I'm going to make sure my son has the tools he needs, but I can't make his choices for him. I can only trust that I raised him right.'" Did he think I'd make the right choice? He knew you would. You're his son in all the ways that matter. We finished our ice cream. Emma fell asleep in the car on the way home. I carried her inside, tucked her into bed in her old room. She grabbed my hand before I could leave. "Daddy, promise you won't leave me?" "I promise, Em. I'm not going anywhere. Ever. Even though I'm Uncle Robert's daughter." I sat on the edge of her bed. "Emma, listen to me. Family isn't about DNA. It's about love. It's about who stays when things get hard. And I'm staying. Always." "Okay," she yawned. "Daddy, I'm glad you're my real dad." "Me too, sweetheart." She fell asleep holding my hand. I sat there for a long time, watching her breathe, feeling the weight of everything we'd been through settle into something manageable, something like peace. Dad's pocket watch ticked in my vest pocket. I pulled it out, opened it, read the engraving again. "Blood doesn't lie, but loyalty defines family." "You were right, Dad, as always." 6 weeks passed. Autumn turned to winter. Emma settled back into her routine. School, homework, bedtime stories. The nightmares stopped. She smiled more, laughed more, started calling my house home again instead of your house. Sarah showed up for her supervised visits sporadically. She'd play with Emma for an hour, awkward and stilted, like she'd forgotten how to be a mother. Or maybe she'd never really known. Emma was polite but distant, like visiting a stranger. Robert disappeared. I heard through the grapevine he'd moved to another state. Debt collectors were looking for him. Good luck to them. I went back to work, my engineering projects. The routine helped. James asked fewer questions, just offered silent support and the occasional beer after work. But something was still missing. The house was quieter without Sarah. Yeah, easier, but also emptier. Like we'd gotten rid of the toxic parts of our life, but hadn't figured out what to fill the space with. Until I met Grace. It was a Sunday morning, 8 weeks after the custody hearing. I'd taken Emma to the community center for an art class, one of those parent-kid activities the social worker had recommended for bonding. Like, we needed help bonding. The teacher was in her 30s, warm smile, kind eyes. She wore a paint-stained apron and had that gentle, patient energy teachers develop after years of dealing with 7-year-olds. "Hi, I'm Grace. You must be Emma's dad?" "David, yeah. Emma talks about you constantly." She knelt down to Emma's level. "Hey there, ready to make some art?" Emma nodded shyly. Grace led her to a table covered in paper and paint. There was another kid there already, a boy about 5, dark hair, gap-toothed smile. "Emma, this is my son Ethan. Ethan, this is Emma." "Hi," Ethan said. "Want to paint dinosaurs?" Emma's face lit up. "Yeah," Grace laughed. "Looks like they'll be friends." We parents stood back while the kids created art that looked like abstract violence, but they insisted were T-Rex battles. Grace glanced at me. "So Emma mentioned her mom isn't around much? It's complicated. Custody battle?" I must have looked surprised because she smiled. "I'm a kindergarten teacher. I've seen every family configuration imaginable. No judgment here. Yeah, custody battle. Just finished, actually. I won." "Congratulations." She meant it. "That must have been hard. You have no idea." "Actually, I might. I'm divorced. 2 years now. My ex didn't want Ethan, said fatherhood wasn't his thing. Just walked away." "I'm sorry," she shrugged. "His loss? Ethan's an amazing kid." We watched them paint. Emma was laughing, really laughing, for the first time in weeks. Ethan was making dinosaur noises. Grace was smiling. "Hey," she said, "there's a coffee shop in the center. After class, if you want to talk to another single parent who gets it." "I'd like that." We talked for 2 hours, about divorce, betrayal, starting over, about being a single parent, about fear and hope, and the weird limbo of rebuilding a life. Grace had a way of listening that made you feel heard without being judged, like she understood the complicated parts without needing them explained. "So, your ex was your brother?" she asked carefully. "Yeah. Sarah had an affair with Robert for 3 years. Emma's his biological daughter. But you kept her." "Of course I kept her. She's my daughter." Grace smiled. "Then you're a better man than most, David." "I don't know about that." "I do. My ex didn't want his own biological son." "You're fighting to keep a daughter who isn't biologically yours. That's love. Real, actual love." Something in my chest loosened, like I'd been holding my breath for months and finally let it go. "Would you want to do this again?" I asked. "Coffee, maybe dinner sometime?" The kids seemed to like each other. "I'd love that." So we did, slowly, carefully, like two people who'd been burned learning to trust fire again. Coffee became dinner. Dinner became weekends at the park. Grace and Ethan became fixtures in our life, and we in theirs. Emma adored Grace. And Ethan was the little brother she'd never had. They'd play for hours. Dinosaurs, dolls, elaborate pretend games involving dragons and spaceships. Grace and I took it slow. No rushing, just learning each other. She'd been hurt too. She understood why I needed to move carefully. Why I still flinch sometimes when my phone rang, expecting bad news. But gradually, carefully, we built something real. 2 months after we met, I invited Grace and Ethan over for Sunday dinner, Dad's tradition. I'd kept it going, just me and Emma, but it felt right to expand it. I made roast dinner, Dad's recipe. The smell filled the house, rosemary, garlic, that specific aroma of home. Emma helped set the table. Grace brought wine and a homemade pie. Ethan brought his dinosaur collection to show Emma. We sat around Dad's big oak table, the table where I'd grown up, where Dad had carved roast every Sunday and said, "Harpers don't abandon family." Now there was a new family here. Not the one I was born into, the one I chose. Grace raised her glass. "To new beginnings." "To family," I added. "To dinosaurs," Ethan shouted. Emma giggled. to dinosaurs. We ate, we talked, we laughed. And for the first time since Dad died, that house felt like home again. After dinner, while Grace and I did dishes, Emma showed Ethan around the house. We could hear them upstairs, their voices carrying down. This is my dad's room, and this is my room, and this is the guest room where you could sleep if you ever stayed over. Cool, we could have sleepovers. Grace smiled. They're adorable together. Yeah. I dried a plate, set it carefully in the cabinet. Grace, can I ask you something? Of course. How did you trust again after your ex left? She was quiet for a moment. I didn't trust the same way. I learned to trust differently, slower, with more questions, but also with more honesty. I decided I'd rather be alone than fake happy. And if someone couldn't handle the real me, the scared, hurt, cautious me, then they weren't the right person. And what if I'm not ready? What if I'm too broken? She turned to face me, sudsy hands and all. David, we're all broken. That's what life does. It breaks us. The question isn't if you're broken. It's whether you're willing to let someone help you heal. Are you offering? I'm offering to try, if you are. I kissed her, soft, tentative, the first kiss in years that felt like hope instead of habit. When we pulled apart, she was smiling. See? Not so scary. Terrifying, actually. Good. Means it matters. The kids ran down the stairs. Dad, can Ethan and his mom come over next Sunday too? Emma and Ethan stood there, hopeful faces, united front. Grace and I looked at each other. Yeah, I said. Yeah, they can. Emma cheered. Ethan high-fived her. Later, after Grace and Ethan left, I tucked Emma into bed. Dad? Yeah, sweetheart? I really like Miss Grace. And Ethan. Me too. Do you think, could they be our family? Like, real family? I sat on the edge of her bed. Emma, family isn't about who you're related to. It's about who you choose to keep, and who chooses to keep you. So if you want them to be family, then yeah, they can be. I want that. Then we'll work on it, together, okay? Okay, she yawned. Dad, can I ask you something else? Always. What's that watch you always carry, the silver one? I pulled it out. This belonged to your grandpa, and his father before him. It was a gift. What does the writing say? I read it to her. Blood doesn't lie, but loyalty defines family. What does that mean? It means real family is the people who stay, who love you when it's hard, who choose you every day even when they don't have to. Emma thought about that. Like you chose me, even though Uncle Robert is my biological dad? Exactly like that. And like Miss Grace and Ethan might choose us? Maybe, if we're lucky. She smiled. I think we're lucky. You know what? I think you're right. She fell asleep holding my hand. I sat there for a while, listening to her breathe, watching the rise and fall of her small chest. 7 years old, growing up fast, but still my little girl. The pocket watch ticked in my hand, steady, reliable, constant. Thanks, Dad, for the watch, for the truth, for teaching me what family really means. 3 months later, everything was different. Emma was thriving in school. Grace and I were officially dating, slowly, carefully, but genuinely. Ethan called me Mr. David and asked if I could teach him to throw a baseball. Emma asked if she could call Grace Miss Grace or just Grace because Mom didn't feel right, but Miss felt too formal. Sunday dinners became a tradition. Every week, the four of us. Sometimes we'd cook together. Sometimes we'd order pizza and play board games until Ethan fell asleep on the couch. Sarah showed up for her visits less and less. She'd call to cancel, some excuse about work or feeling sick. Emma stopped asking why, just accepted it. The social worker said it was actually healthy. Emma was detaching from the unhealthy relationship, forming secure attachments with me and Grace. Robert never came back. Rumor was he'd moved to Florida. Emma never asked about him, barely remembered him. But the real test came 4 months after the custody hearing. Sarah's attorney called Margaret. Ms. Harper would like to discuss reducing her visitation schedule voluntarily. She feels it's too disruptive to her new life. What new life? Margaret asked. She's engaged, moving to California. The visits are difficult. Margaret called me. David, Sarah wants to give up her parental rights. I sat down. Hard. What? She's engaged to someone else, wants to start fresh. She's willing to sign away all parental rights in exchange for you, agreeing not to pursue child support payments she currently owes. She owes child support? Court ordered. She's 3 months behind, about $6,000. I thought about Emma, about how she'd stopped flinching when the phone rang, how she'd started calling my house home without qualifiers, how she'd asked last week if she could officially change her last name to Harper. Tell her yes, I said. I'll forgive the support payments. She can sign away her rights. Are you sure? Margaret, Emma deserves a mother who wants her. Sarah isn't that. She never was. I'm not going to force her to pretend anymore. What about Emma? Should we tell her? I'll tell her when she's ready. But honestly, I don't think she'll be surprised. The papers came through 2 weeks later. Sarah's signature, neat and final, giving up all legal claim to Emma Harper. Emma was officially, legally, completely mine. I cried when I signed my name, not because I was sad, because it was over. The fight, the fear, the uncertainty, all over. That night at dinner, just me, Emma, Grace, and Ethan, I told Emma, "Sweetie, I need to talk to you about something." She looked up from her pasta, eyes wide. "Did I do something wrong?" No, nothing like that. It's about your mom." Emma's face closed. "Oh, she's moving to California. She's getting married. And she asked if it would be okay if I was your only legal parent, if she didn't have to visit anymore." "What did you say?" I said yes, but I wanted to make sure you're okay with it. Emma was quiet. Then, "Does this mean she doesn't want to be my mom anymore?" God, how do you answer that? "Honey, I think your mom loves you in her own way, but sometimes people aren't good at being parents, and that's okay, because you have people who are good at it. You have me, and you have Grace and Ethan, right?" Grace reached over, squeezed Emma's hand. "You'll always have us, Emma. Always." Emma looked at her. "Promise?" "Promise." Ethan piped up. "You can share my mom if you want. She's got lots of love." Emma laughed through tears. "Thanks, Ethan." Later, after the kids were in bed, Ethan was sleeping over more and more often. Grace and I sat on the porch. "How do you feel?" she asked. "Relieved, sad for Emma, but mostly relieved." "It's a lot, processing all of it." "Grace, I need to tell you something." She turned to face me, worried. "Okay. I'm falling in love with you, and it terrifies me. Because the last time I loved someone, she destroyed me, and I don't know if I can survive that again." Grace was quiet. Then she took my hand. "David, I can't promise I'll never hurt you. Nobody can promise that. People hurt each other. It's part of being human. But I can promise I'll never betray you. I'll never lie to you. And if I hurt you, it'll be an accident, not a choice. And I'll work every day to make it right." That's enough? It has to be, because the alternative is being alone forever. And I don't want that, do you? No? Then let's be terrified together. I kissed her. Okay. We sat there for a long time, holding hands, watching the stars. Inside, Emma and Ethan were sleeping in their respective rooms. My house, my family. Not the family I'd planned, not the family I was born into, but the family I chose, and who chose me back. The pocket watch was in my pocket. I pulled it out, showed it to Grace. She read the engraving. "Blood doesn't lie, but loyalty defines family. Your father was a wise man." Yeah, he was, and he taught me the most important lesson I ever learned. What's that? That family isn't something you're given. It's something you build, one choice at a time. 6 months after the custody hearing, life had settled into a new rhythm. Not the old normal, something better, something real. Emma was 8 now. She'd asked if she could legally change her middle name to Grace. We were working on it. Ethan had his own drawer in the guest room, his own toothbrush in the bathroom, his own place at the table. Grace had a key to the house. She'd leave little notes sometimes, went grocery shopping back soon, or took the kids to the park, join us when you're done with work. We hadn't talked about moving in together, hadn't talked about marriage. But we didn't need to. We were building something at our own pace, something that felt permanent without needing to be labeled. Sunday dinner was sacred again. Every week, the 4 of us around Dad's table. I'd carve the roast the way Dad taught me. We'd talk about our week. Emma would tell bad jokes. Ethan would show us his latest dinosaur drawing. Grace would steal food off my plate and pretend she didn't. It felt like home. One Sunday, Emma asked about the pocket watch. "Dad, can I see Grandpa's watch?" I unclipped it from my vest, handed it to her. "Careful, it's old." She held it like it was made of glass, turned it over, read the engraving. "Blood doesn't lie, but loyalty defines family." "What does that mean?" I glanced at Grace. She nodded. "It means," I said carefully, "that blood tells you where you came from, but loyalty tells you who you are. And family isn't about DNA. It's about who stays, who loves you when it's hard, who chooses you every day. Like you chose me, even though Uncle Robert is my real dad. Emma, Robert is the man who made you. I'm your real dad. There's a difference." "What's the difference?" "He gave you DNA. I gave you 7 years of bedtime stories, of scraped knees and chicken soup when you're sick, of homework help and terrible jokes, of showing up every single day, even the hard ones. That's what makes someone a real parent." Emma thought about that. Then she looked at Grace. "Is Miss Grace going to be my real mom then, since she shows up?" Grace's eyes filled with tears. "Emma, if you want me to be, I'd be honored, but that's up to you. And Ethan would be my real brother." "If you want him to be," I said. "I want that." She hugged Grace, then me, then made Ethan come over for a group hug. He protested, "I'm eating," but joined anyway. We stood there in a tangle of arms and hearts, a family made of choices instead of chromosomes. That night, after Grace and Ethan went home, though home was becoming fluid, they were here more often than not, Emma asked me to tell her about her grandfather. We sat on her bed, the pocket watch between us. "Grandpa was the best man I ever knew," I said. "He was a judge, spent his whole life making sure people got justice. And he taught me that justice isn't about punishment, it's about making things right." "Is that why he gave you everything and Uncle Robert nothing?" "Smart kid." "Yeah. He wanted to make sure loyalty was rewarded, that people who do the right thing don't lose." "Did Uncle Robert do the wrong thing?" "He did. He hurt people he should have protected. Me, your mom, you. But you did the right thing." "I tried to. I stayed. I loved you even when things were hard. I chose you." "And Grandpa knew you would?" "I think so. He believed in me, even when I didn't believe in myself." Emma picked up the watch, held it to her ear. "It ticks like a heartbeat." "Yeah, like Grandpa's heartbeat, steady, strong, always there." "I miss him." "Me too, kiddo, every day." "Do you think he'd like Miss Grace and Ethan?" I thought about that, about Dad's last letter, about his philosophy, about how he'd defined family not by blood, but by loyalty, by choice. "Yeah," I said. "I think he'd love them, because they chose us. And we chose them. And that's what Grandpa believed the family should be." "Good." Emma yawned. "Dad, can I keep the watch in here so I can hear it tick?" "Sure, sweetheart." I set it on her nightstand. It ticked softly in the quiet room. "Dad?" "Yeah? I'm glad you're my real dad. I'm glad you chose me." "I'm glad you chose me too, Em." She fell asleep smiling. I went downstairs. The house was quiet. Clean dishes drying on the rack. School papers on the counter. Grace's sweater on the back of a chair. Evidence of life. Of family. I thought about the man I'd been 7 years ago in that hospital room. Scared, suspicious, demanding a paternity test. Then the man I'd been 6 months ago, standing in Margaret's office, learning the truth about my entire life. And now I was someone different. Someone who'd been broken and had chosen to heal. Someone who'd lost everything and had built something better. My phone buzzed, text from Grace. "Ethan wants to know if he can bring his sleeping bag next Sunday. Says he wants to camp out in Emma's room." I smiled, texted back. "Tell him yes, they can camp out. We'll make popcorn and tell ghost stories. You're going to regret that at 2 a.m. when they're still awake. Worth it, 3 dots. Then, I love you, David Harper." My hands shook as I typed back. "I love you too." First time I'd said it. First time I'd meant it in years. The pocket watch ticked upstairs, steady, constant. Dad's heartbeat in the house. I could almost hear his voice. "You did good, son. You chose right." "Yeah, Dad, I think I did." It was Sunday morning, 8 months after the custody hearing. Spring had arrived, turning everything green and alive again. Emma was at the table doing homework. Grace was making pancakes. Ethan was building a Lego dinosaur on the floor. This was my life now. This was my family. The doorbell rang. Emma ran to answer it. "I'll get it," before I could stop her. She opened the door, and there was Sarah. I hadn't seen her in 4 months. She looked different. Expensive clothes, new haircut, skin tanned from California sun. A man stood beside her, tall, older, wedding ring on his finger. "Emma," Sarah said, her smile forced. "Hi, baby?" Emma just stared. "Hi." I came to the door. "Sarah, what are you doing here?" I wanted to see Emma and to apologize. Introduce my husband, Marcus. Marcus extended a hand. I didn't take it. "You signed away your parental rights," I said. "You don't get to just show up." "I know, but I thought Emma should know I didn't abandon her, that I think about her." Emma looked up at me. "Dad?" "It's okay, Em. Go inside. Grace is making pancakes." She hesitated, then quietly, "I don't want to talk to her, Dad." My heart broke and mended in the same moment. "You don't have to." Emma walked inside without looking back. Sarah's face crumpled. "Emma, please." "No," I said firmly. "You made your choice. You gave up your rights. You don't get to disrupt her life when you feel guilty. I'm her mother." "No, you're the woman who gave birth to her. Grace is her mother now. Grace shows up. Grace tucks her in. Grace loves her without conditions or contracts. You're just someone who used to be here." Sarah started crying. "I made mistakes, David, but I'm trying to make amends." "Then leave. That's the amends you can make. Leave her alone. Let her be happy. But go, Sarah, before I call the police for harassment." Marcus put a hand on Sarah's shoulder. "Come on, honey, let's go." They left. Sarah looked back once, but Emma wasn't watching. She was inside with Grace and Ethan, eating pancakes, laughing at some joke I'd missed. I closed the door. Grace appeared beside me. "You okay?" Yeah, I'm okay." That was brave. It was necessary. Emma doesn't need her guilt trips. She needs stability. She has it, with you, with us. I pulled her close, kissed the top of her head. With us. We went back to the kitchen. Emma was telling Ethan about a girl at school who liked him. He was making faces. Grace was serving pancakes. Normal, mundane, perfect. This was my family, not the one I'd imagined when I was young, not the one I'd tried to force with Sarah, but the one I'd chosen piece by piece, choice by choice. Later that day, after brunch, after the kids went outside to play, I pulled out the pocket watch. Grace saw me holding it. "What are you thinking about?" "My dad, how he knew this would happen, how he set everything up to give me the tools I needed. He loved you very much." "Yeah, he did, and he taught me something important." "What's that?" "That the best revenge isn't destroying your enemies. It's building a life so good they can't touch it." Grace smiled. "Is that what you've done?" I looked out the window. Emma and Ethan were playing tag in the yard, laughing, carefree, safe. "Yeah," I said. "I think it is." That night I tucked Emma into bed. She was getting too old for it, really, but I wasn't ready to give it up. Neither was she. "Dad, was that really my birth mom today?" "Yeah, it was." She looked different. People change. Do you think she misses me? Maybe, but missing someone and being good for them are two different things. I'm glad I have you and Grace and Ethan. Me too, kiddo. Dad, can I ask you something? Always. When I grow up, am I going to be like her? Like Sarah? No, Emma, you're going to be like you. And that's more than enough. She smiled. Okay, good night, Dad. Good night, sweetheart. I went downstairs. Grace was on the couch reading. I sat beside her, and she immediately curled into me. Long day, she murmured. Yeah, but a good one. They usually are. With you. We sat in comfortable silence. The house creaked. The kids slept upstairs. Outside, the world kept turning. I pulled out the pocket watch, opened it, read the engraving for the 1,000th time. Blood doesn't lie, but loyalty defines family. Grace read it over my shoulder. Your father was right. He usually was. What are you going to do with it? When Emma's older, give it to her. Let her pass it on to her kids. Keep the lesson alive. That's beautiful. I closed the watch, felt its weight in my palm, the weight of legacy, of choices, of love that transcended biology. You know what I've learned? I said. What? Family isn't who you're born to. It's who you choose to keep. and who chooses to keep you. Grace kissed me. I choose you, David Harper. I choose you too. Upstairs, Emma was sleeping. In the guest room, Ethan was curled up with his stuffed dinosaur. In this house, in this moment, everything was exactly as it should be. Not perfect, but real, and chosen. And ours. The pocket watch ticked. Dad's heart, still beating in this house, still teaching me lessons, still reminding me that loyalty defines family. And I'd built a loyal family, not through blood, through choice. That was enough. That was everything. People ask me sometimes how I got through it, how I forgave, how I moved on. Truth is, I didn't forgive everyone. I don't owe Sarah or Robert my forgiveness. They made their choices. They live with the consequences. But I did forgive myself, for doubting, for being afraid, for not seeing the signs sooner, for almost giving up. And I chose to build something new, not out of anger or revenge, out of love. My father left me 3 things when he died. The money, I used it to give Emma and Ethan a good life. College funds, a safe home, stability. The truth, it set me free. Hurt like hell, but it freed me from years of lies and doubt. But the watch reminds me every day. Blood doesn't lie. But loyalty? Loyalty defines family. And family isn't who you're born to. It's who you choose to keep, and who chooses to keep you. That's the legacy I'll pass on, to Emma, to Ethan, to anyone who will listen. Because at the end of the day, the best revenge isn't destroying your enemies. It's building a life so good, they can't touch it. I built that life, one choice at a time, one Sunday dinner at a time, one bedtime story at a time. And you know what? It's pretty damn good. We had Sunday dinner last week. Me, Grace, Emma, Ethan, roast beef, potatoes, the works. Emma asked if she could wind the pocket watch. I said yes. She held it carefully, wound it 3 clicks, listened to it tick. Grandpa would like this, she said. All of us together. Yeah, I said. He would. Dad, will you teach me to make roast dinner so I can do it someday? Of course. And will you tell me more stories about Grandpa? As many as you want. She smiled, put the watch back in its place, went back to her seat, and we ate, and we talked, and we laughed. Family, real, chosen, loyal family. That's what Dad gave me. Not just money or truth or a watch, but the lesson that mattered most. Loyalty defines family, and family is who you choose. I chose well. They chose me back, and that's everything.